Okay, can I call this regular council meeting of 2014-02-11 to order and a motion for approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Mann. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of 2013-01-28. You want to do this as a block or? One by one?
No, yeah. We need to do them as a block.
Okay.
I'll move that we receive, we adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 28, 2014. And the committee of the whole meeting, February 4th, 2014. The Sustainable Economic Development Select Committee minutes of September 23rd, 2013, and the Healthcare Select Committee minutes of January 30th, 2014.
Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Lane. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. No delegations. On to the fours. Business arising from the minutes. 4A, report from the administrator.
Okay, well, I'm happy to report as of today, Glen Water's back from his holidays and we can, and he'll be there for the committee of the whole finance meeting next week. In terms of the Kendall building, as I reported there, we did have a pretty serious failure of the system overnight on Thursday last week. We're not sure what the budget fallout from this will be yet, because we're not sure just how serious the situation is with the heating system, although we do have suspicions that some substantial repairs or enhancements may be required to resolve it, because it's not, this going wrong isn't the first indication that it's not optimal. However, I will certainly report back to Council as soon as I can on that matter. The Health Committee has successfully recruited a first responder representative to the committee and provided her recommendation.
I'd like to move the recommendation that Douglas Yee be appointed to the Health Select Committee as first responder representative with Finance co-chair, acting as alternate.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Lane, tie for second, but we'll give it to Councillor Holland. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Working also with some tight deadlines, the tender deadline for the wildfire fuel treatment project is February 13th. Myself and Mr. Catherall will be bringing a report to Council. It should be ready by the 18th. With that in mind, if you would like to have a quick special meeting on the 18th, you could review the report and make the awards at that time.
So I'll move the special meeting of council be held for wildfire interface tender review and decision on February 18th at 4 p.m.
Second.
Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Now that was for... Okay, 4A.
And just a quick reminder to you all that tomorrow at 10 we've got visual quality objectives information session for Council. Again, if you can't make it, if there's anything you want me to put to the ministry staff, just let me know.
Sorry, and that's here?
Yep.
In this room?
Well, probably the room through there, but if she needs a projector, we could do it in here too. Okay.
I'll be there.
I'll be there too. Is the community forced aware of this?
Probably not. Sadly, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know whether the manager's here on, usually comes on Mondays, so Tuesday, but you'd have to get a hold of him in the morning.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
As requested at committee bill, I provided a draft letter on the hospital traffic issue from Mr. Ken Free.
Council like to move that letter? Moved by Councilor Lane,
Second.
second by Councilor Holland. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. So where do we leave that then? There would be a whole, you'll come back with a staff report based on when highways and these guys and all the boys. That's gonna be fun. All right. 5A, letter dated 2014-023 from the Castle District Library.
I'll move that.
That's 5B, did I miss something?
Are we on, I was going to go
Oh,
to 5A.
sorry.
That's all right, 5A.
So I'll move that the library board be sent a response indicating the village's commitment to providing improved internet bandwidth within the village Castle City Hall, including subject to continued progress on the Columbia Basin Broadband Corporation fiber project.
Second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion, call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. 5B, letter dated 2014-0123 from the Canadian Wildlife Service.
I'll move that the letter be received and filed.
Second.
Discussion. Councilor Holland.
I was very disappointed that I read through probably about 40 or 50 pages of environmental report, which is, I mean, I have to say, I kind of, but I was really looking for the information on the warty jumping slug. And they didn't have a picture of it, and I would give just about anything. So I guess if you could ask them if they could send us an update on the warty jumping slug, I'd really like to check that little guy out.
I found that document very difficult for councils. I don't care which council we're talking about here in the Regional District of Central Kootenai to really understand. I was looking for the issue of caribou, which in the States have been declared extirpated. They're not going to spend any more money on mountain caribou down there. But this
Here's a
whole...
wordy jumping slug.
Where did you find that?
Type in to Google,
Is there
wordy
any
jumping
vid-
slug.
Any videos?
I don't imagine he moves too quick.
Slug jump, that's what I want to know.
So, the motion was to receive, it was seconded, is that correct?
Yep.
Can we call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, and 5C, invitation to community forum on CBT youth funds. Councilors like to attend this? Councilor Lane?
I really feel strongly that somebody from council should go. I have to curl that night, but I could probably squeeze it in if I'm the only one available. But I think there should be somebody from council.
I plan to go.
You plan to go?
Yeah, it's from 3:30 to 5:30, I think, so.
Yeah, well, my employer is in that day, and my husband's
Yeah.
driving home, so I can't be.
So,
If you're going, I'm not going to go. I just felt that it would be bad if.
yeah, no, because I went to this,
Yeah, you went.
bring it back, come back with the
Project come back. Yeah.
project come back, so I thought I'd follow that up.
Yeah. No, that's great that you're willing to do that.
So I actually put it on the calendar, but I might need it later. Okay, committee and staff reports. Communications for information.
Yeah, I wanted to pull a couple items. I want to pull the liquor control licensing branch news release and the British Columbia Liquor Control Board press release regarding the new special occasion liquor licensing regulations. And I've asked that they be referred to committee of the whole in order that the village's liquor licensing and special occasion bylaw can be reviewed in light of the new regulations.
So could we get a motion to receive the other ones? Moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor Lane. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes to receive all the other ones. Do you want to make a
And
recommendation?
to refer the two items, one's on page 71, one's on page 86. Two items I mentioned be referred to committee of the whole. So that we can,
Yeah,
I
moved
think
by
our
Councilor
bylaws
Holland.
going to be rewritten.
Boy, is that pile getting smaller or bigger? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, committee and staff reports, 7A.
Okay, you have a number of action items there from last committee of the whole.
So I'll move the first at the village, secure rental of the United Church Hall for the City Hall fundraiser from May days.
Second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Motion passes.
I'll move the second one, that staff proceed to purchase 500 corporate pin badges with the municipal coat of arms and blue coloring.
Second by Councilor Holland. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move the third one, that Mr. Dan Miles be sent a letter of congratulations for his recent outstanding principal award from the Learning Partnership.
Second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
That's really good.
Yeah, it's been signed actually. Okay. So we're on 7B, which is, has council had a chance to review that document? Councilor Lang?
Yes, I read it a couple times, and what we're being asked to do is contribute to a fund to study this proposal.
Well, to prepare a model as to what it would look like.
Yeah, and I will support that. I think that it warrants further investigation. And if Columbia Basin Trust is putting in the lion's share of the funding to do this, I think we'd be foolish not to take advantage.
Would you like to make that recommendation?
Yeah. How can that be really corrected that we participate?
Yeah, there's a, sorry, I think there is a recommendation there. Oh, no, I didn't put one in there. I apologize.
Well, there's one in blue on the agenda page.
Yes.
So that's a possible.
I'm trying to get back and I'm still in the document. Okay, here we go. The village participates in the Village of Silverton's Joint Financial Service Initiative with a contribution of $2,000.
Seconder? Can I second something like that? No seconder? Motion fails.
I'd like to make a motion that we refer this to committee of the whole budget for discussion. So I need some clarification on this. If there's a second, I'll speak to it.
Well, I'll second it then.
So there's some, I had a couple problems that sort of extrapolated and expanded a little bit on the CAO's comments around. I wasn't aware that the village of Kaslo was seeking a chief financial officer, and I'm not sure without a little bit more discussion, maybe there's a need for that, maybe there's not. So I'd like to have some clarification on that before we invest $2,000 and go in a direction that this is all news to me. It's the first time I've heard of it. And even in the application, it stated that we're in the process of seeking a CFO. I'm totally unaware of that. So, not in principle, sharing services is not a bad idea. I have a little bit of a problem with seeing the city of Nelson as the one that be providing this service for us versus the regional district. I think the regional district's better situated for creating joint services rather than, it just seems more complicated to do that with the city of Nelson rather than the regional district. So I'm recommending that we discuss this in committee of the whole in more depth.
Further discussion? Councilor
The
Lehman?
regional district hasn't offered that service.
No, they haven't.
Only the city.
They're
does.
part of the model.
Right.
There have been no decisions made by any of the municipalities other than to have a consultant prepare a report about options.
And I think this whole discussion started around the concept of not having a keeping member as a signing authority on our checks, that we wanted an independent person independent. And C.O. Smith had brought up the subject that this is unusual. It's unusual for a municipality to have.
I think the issue is that other municipalities are having trouble recruiting CFOs, like they're not available. And at the meeting, the CFOs that were there said using semi-retired, retired CFOs to fill in the village is not sustainable, it's not going to last, and you are going to have to face the issue of part-time CAOs if you go with that model. Because, you know, and especially in the case of Silverton and Slocan, they can't afford a full-time CAO. They will always have. The other thing was there was a consistency of systems. Like all of the members involved are using Maze. So the regional district and Brian Carruthers was instrumental in getting the $25,000 from Columbia Basin Trust to initiate this study. But they have a whole new system at the regional district for doing the books, which is out of step with, so I mean, there's other, see the idea of the model was to answer all of those questions. We can discuss it at committee of the whole. If the decision was made to participate, then we would then, you know, provide input to the consultant who was going to put the model to see what the future looks like. So, any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. New email addresses.
Yes, that's just for council's information that we're switching over to some new ones. It seems to have happened quite successfully. When the new council comes along in November, all the new councillors will get kaslo.ca email addresses as well.
Okay. And do you want to talk to this, Parks?
Sure. Following last week's committee of the whole, I had some discussions with regional district park service staff to discuss some of the challenges that came up that were mentioned at that meeting, and some of the additional challenges that I've been observing on parks and recreation since I arrived. There's quite a lot there, but basically what I've seen is that what I was concerned about was that an informal dialogue with the community on park strategies could be prone to fairly circular discussions. It might be hard to find a consensus given the variety of user groups involved and interested. We first need a framework with some clear anticipated outcomes of some description from that to make a difference. Before the recent spate of communications, I had been concerned with some of the matters that were referenced, although I've got a lot of confidence in the Public Works Foreman and crew and Kaslo Trailblazer Society and what they do. What is lacking is a coordinated framework of consultation, cooperation and maintenance derived and developed from the OCP and RACK general policies where their parks are concerned. For the Public Works crew to require a lot of consultation and authorization every time they want to do a little bit of maintenance in the parks or take down a danger tree, that would undermine the active management of our facilities. I don't think that would be a positive situation at all. So we need an alternative to that. The village is unlikely to be able to provide significant funds or overstaffed time towards a farm planning initiative of its own in 2014. But we do have an additional process underway in the regional district right now. The parks planning process underway, and it has been suggested to me that the village could, to some degree, open dialogue to partner on that and try and resolve at least some of these issues. Maybe not all, but at least some. The RDCK staff are in broad agreement that some of the issues mentioned do need to be addressed, so that their service resources are better spent and local area management needs are better assessed by both local governments. It's just an increase in oversight and active management of our properties and recreational areas. For example, knowing where a trail project's coming from, what the story is there, dealing with stewardship agreements and having proper formal ones in place. For example, if we had an appropriately structured stewardship agreement in place with a society, we might be in a position to extend insurance coverage over them without too great a difficulty. But that means getting some nuts and bolts agreements put together. So all in all, there's quite a lot of work involved in getting to that point, but it could be initiated this year. It might be a little bit of a bureaucratic start, but I think it could have results in the long term, medium term, I should say.
Yeah, I don't know what's the matter with my thing here, but did you make a recommendation?
Yes, a big long wordy one. I don't know if you're going through.
Yeah, I'd be willing to move it if I don't have to read it.
So it's been moved. Seconder?
Second.
Second by Councillor Lane.
For discussion. I think one of the sticking points in this current relationship with the RDCK is the accounting of the funds. They would like a better accounting of where that money's being, where and how it's being spent. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that our contribution far outweighs what the $10,000 that they're currently contributing with when you look at all the work that's been done along on our trail system and throughout the Bay Area and so on and so forth. But it seems to be a bit of a sticky issue where that money's being spent and how it's being spent. So some kind of financial disclosure document, I think, would go a long way to smoothing those ruffled feathers. And but I'm not against entering into this process. I'm a little concerned that it could get very, we could get a little bit bound up in red tape here if the thing is let run a little bit wild. You know, I'm all for public engagement and everything, but I think we need to. So many good things have happened over the last 10 years to our trail system and how it's become a major feature of the community. And I just don't want to see it, that whole momentum come to a grinding halt because we have to wait for this meeting, that committee, this report, so on and so forth. Enough said.
Councillors, any other comments? My term on the board, I reviewed probably 6 of the regional districts' parks plans, which were produced at quite a cost. And the amount of detail and the obligations in terms of this, who supervises activities at the park. No, I mean, I couldn't believe how complicated the regional district's park system is. It's a subject of significant debate, and some areas are pulling out of the parks agreements because they find that they're too onerous, and for the very reasons you pointed out, it tends to impede the ability of small communities like Rhinedale to get anything done. The cost to put the park plan in place exceeds the amount of revenue available, plus the liability issues is another. So I think the process is a good idea. I want to thank the CAO because I think this is the first time we've addressed this issue in a substantive manner. It needs to be done. I think working with the regional district based on the thousands of dollars they've spent trying to develop park plans would benefit us by lessons learned, because some of them passed, some of them didn't pass, but I do think we need to move ahead here. I'm just not too sure in terms of priorities where council is at. Is this a high priority, or it's almost a project of the 10 things we listed to do? Like this one is I don't know how much time we want to spend on it other than a cursory lessons learned or an overview or a process to follow to get to where we want to be. But whether we want to try and, with all that Neil's got to do between now and the next December, I'm really wondering how much time we want to put into this. But, you know, you have a comment?
All I would say is that some of the items I've addressed there are issues that we are in the process of trying to deal with a little bit here, a little bit there, legitimising our relationship with the trail builders and so on is one aspect that's actually quite challenging because of the whole area of insurance. So I'm keen that we deal with some of these aspects regardless of what happened at committee of the whole last week. Some of these issues have come up already. And I believe we're actually, something that needs to come up at budget is actually the question of whether we bring the arbors back. The tree policy is every 5 years. So again, do we bring them back this year? So there are issues that we have policies for that we need to make determinations to actually have the resources to do it this year.
So is there a recommendation? I can't get this.
It's been moved and seconded.
Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. I don't know why when I hit my screen.
Could you repeat what that motion was? I couldn't hear.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, it's very long, as we didn't read it out.
But let's read it out.
We can,
Yeah.
The Village of Kaslo formally requests the inclusion and special focus on a partnership framework for Kaslo waterfront park and trail areas in the current regional district of Central Kootenays Farms planning process, with the goal of outlining a strategy for the establishment of agreed park and trail footprints that conform to policies and regulations, form park and trail regulations, standards for staff and third parties to follow, clarifying jurisdictional roles and implementing legal stewardship agreements with third parties, addressing outstanding tenure and lands matters impacting co-management, consultation and approval process of new capital or trail projects prior to grant application, capital asset management plans and active risk liability management on trails, special interest group accommodation and general public consultation, the creation of operational and maintenance plans for standard operating guidelines.
So that'll all be on the web tomorrow or the next day or something. Okay, so can we move on then to 7E?
So I'll move that the minutes of the RDCK PEP meeting held on January 14th be received.
Second by Councillor Holland. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. And the next one, PEP minutes. Sorry?
They just did PEP minutes.
Okay. Was this on here twice then, Neil? So we're on 7F now? Oh. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to this?
I guess the only real recommendation I'm looking for coming out of this report is that the council agree that a public meeting would be of benefit in our discussions. And I have no particular time frame in mind other than I'd like to see it happen prior to July 1st, but a lot will depend on how else unfolds in the meantime. But I'd like to get some consensus from council as to if they feel engaging the public at this point in the process is a good idea.
Do you want to make a recommendation then that there be a public meeting held prior to July 1st concerning the future of the airport?
Future of the airport, I think it should be really broad. I don't think we need to narrow it down. So I would make that recommendation.
Prior to July 1st?
Yeah, location would likely be the seniors hall on a Saturday from noon until 4 o'clock, something of that description. Get some maps out. Put some, some printed material that would be available to circulate, some charts and graphs, whatever. And the reason I'm being really big on the timeline is because I'm not really sure where we're at with negotiations with the committee in terms of them becoming a legitimate group. And if that process falters, then we may have to look at other options. So, but it was really Councillor Leithwood that brought this forward, and I totally support her saying that it's time to consult the community, or at least get some feedback from the community on how they feel about increased activity, I guess would be a good way of phrasing it.
So there's the motion. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Second by Councillor Hall. Discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for the effort that went into preparing that. And 10. Counts January 22nd to 5th.
So,
did I miss something?
yeah. 7G, Regional District Director's Report.
Oh, okay.
Very brief. There was a budget meeting it happened right after the last committee of the whole, and at that budget meeting, the director's priorities, which council participated in, the other directors all submitted their priorities, so it's 2 pages. If anybody's interested in that, I have it. We can pass that around. So it's some directors. No, we just got this. There was some preliminary stuff that I sent around as we were working out. I sent those around to you so you can kind of get an idea of what kind of things were coming forward. So that's finalized. So there's just that. And then we went over there's some preliminary budget discussions. We reviewed Services 101, which is General Administration, Service 103, which is Rural Administration, and we did Environmental Services, and we did all the Waste Services. These are, I'm certain you guys aren't interested, but I've got them, if you are. It's laid out quite nicely using the new Aggresso. The Aggresso accounting software is, I'm not a books person, and I'm already kind of impressed. It's looking way more slick and comprehensible for me than the Maze program. They're in the process of rolling out over the regional district right now. I've got this stuff you want to look at. It's not for public consumption. It's strictly, these are working documents, but if you guys want to look at it, I got them there. And the only thing that came out of that I've mentioned to you now that was some interest is the administration fees and costs associated with operating water services. It's never been it's not on a full cost recovery basis right now. And right now they're seriously looking at doing that, which will be it's going to be a pretty good hit. So the only guys that really affect us will be the McDonald Creek water users up there, if they go, because they've been the service costs around provision of the water in these different little areas has sort of been averaged out amongst all. For some, it's really skyrocketing high. For some others, it's not so bad. What they're talking about doing is breaking it down by service, so each service would pay what their actual administration costs are. So that means when you get down to a service of 10 or 12 users or something like that, it can get a little crazy. So that's the only thing and I got a feeling it's sliding towards full cost recovery on that. That's it.
Any questions, Councillor Hewitt?
The public budget meeting is February 19th
Correct.
at noon.
At noon here.
Councillor Lang?
No, I haven't.
I have a question concerning the fire hall budget. 'Cause I know that the fire hall budget is is that fixed or that's still being debated, or what's the story there?
You mean the construction of the fire?
No, just the budget for the fire service.
The budget for the fire service.
So
There's
that's,
a requisition, there's a tax requisition.
Yeah.
That I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but the tax requisition is fixed, and you're asking if the budget's been developed for the operating of the new fire hall?
Well, yeah, usually our fire chief turns in a budget for
We
the
haven't seen
operation.
that. No, all we went over was general administration, road administration. So coming up on the budget meetings on
17th.
February 27th. They were going to be on the 26th and 27th, but we did really good on this chunk, so they cut it down to one day this month. So February 27th, we'll get into specific services like fire services and things like that.
Thank you.
Just for the very latest comment, yeah, I'm curious, I had forgotten now exactly how the cost of the building was going to be integrated into the tax structure, and it'd be nice to know where, at what point we're paying for what.
I think there are two separate bylaws. I think that one of the bylaws is a capital
Right.
thing, which is that you're going to retire that in 20 or 25 years.
Right.
And the operating is a separate thing, and they were combined in the referendum years ago.
Yeah, but we're going to you're going to, on this year's tax assessment, you're going to see the operating portion. Is any of the capital costs going to be attached to this year's?
Yeah, I'm sure that taxation will start in 2014, yeah.
Okay.
Councilor Hewitt?
you probably can't answer this, so you basically did, but, so if they're coming to discuss budget with Kaslo on the 19th, in theory, they'll have numbers available at that time?
Yeah. That'll be the time to ask these questions to those guys.
Okay.
Okay, so, I've got 10 here, but I can't somehow get this thing to go scroll to the bottom, so can somebody read what the number is?
The accounts payable in the amount of $36,478.52 be approved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Lang, second by Councilor Holland. Discussion, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion passes. And let's see if this comes
You want me to read the next one too?
up. Yes.
That the financial report from the deputy clerk dated December 2013 be received.
Moved by Councilor Lang, second by Councilor Hewitt. Discussion.
I was going to ask if we could, if I could ask the CAO, and this is further to some of the comments that Councilor Lang was just making. We've got budgeted amounts in here for fire chief, deputy chief, fire brigade, insurance fire brigade, fire inspections, well, not the inspection services, fire department travel, capital costs, and all those amounts that are currently budgeted.
We're not currently budgeting for those, they should all get approved.
Correct. So I was just, I get it. It's a really straightforward answer now, but also I was saying if you could help us out a little bit for the next budget meeting so that we can kind of have those, because I can scan through here and I can spot some of them, but I know there's some of them probably hiding in here that I'm not seeing. So I'd like to have a little bit of a report on the implications around the role of the fire service from the village of Kaslo to the regional district.
It will be about a shift of about, from my understanding, about $60,000.
Okay, I found 50s.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Probably higher than that, wouldn't it? Because you said the debt servicing?
Oh, yes, I'm not counting.
Okay. So, I think a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor Lang. Discussion, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Very good.
It's not surprising considering the issues.
Is it possible to ask a question?
Yeah, it certainly is.
I have to explain that I have difficulty hearing. I'm wearing hearing aids, but I still don't hear everything. And I came because I really care about what's happening with our our lakefront protection development area and the stream protection area. And I didn't really catch everything that was said, if anything was said specifically about those things from last week's meeting. And I want to suggest that there be public representation or any sort of a committee or an overview, because it seems to me that things have slid in terms of action and non-action over the last, say, 10 years or more. That's all. I would like it if that could be considered as part of the follow-up, that there be public representation on supervising what's happening there. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of, was there a recommendation to establish a committee?
No, we didn't say that one.
It was a consideration that we asked for a staff report. So there was a consideration for a staff report. And if I can't remember what part of Neil's long recommendation, but there was certainly a phrase there suggesting that as part of that overview strategy, public involvement would be used to make decisions. Now, we're into a very complex situation. Like, this is the first time we've had a comprehensive approach to bringing together these issues under the Parks and Recreation title. You can say it that way. So I'm looking forward to it. I think there will be a process once there's a structure in place to allow a measured attempt to bring these things all to bear prior to spending decisions being made.
Okay.
That's the best I can do. Councilor.
So there is a mechanism that's currently being instituted at the regional district level around where there's a shared service between Kaslo and Area D. The front waterfront trail is part of that. Is a service that's shared by Kaslo and Area D. And it'll be the North Kootenai Lake Services Committee. And that services committee will have direct input to the board of the regional district, which is another avenue. One avenue is through the village of Kaslo, because it's village of Kaslo that's mainly doing the work out there. But some of the funding comes from the regional district. So there'll be two avenues. One in the resolution we passed tonight. There's a commitment in that resolution for public consultation. There'll also be an avenue for public involvement, engagement in the North Kootenai Lake Community Services Committee meetings. And those aren't, the meetings aren't set yet, and they're still working on the, I don't know if you call it the enacting legislation, whatever it is, the thing that formalizes that is still happening, but it should happen pretty quick.
So would they be handling development permits and things like that?
No, that would be the village of Kaslo. The leverage that you'd have through the North Kootenai Lake Community Services is that the regional district contributes $10,000 annually to the maintenance of these trails out here. Some of that, what's out there, is not directly on the trail property, but there's going to be some connection there for sure.
And in some ways, just leaving it alone is probably going to be the best thing to do.
Well, I think it's fair to say that that's what's going to happen in the short term until this review's taken place, until we get a framework to operate from. So the whole thing, like, it's never been done before in all the years I've been involved that we've ever sat down and really developed a plan that covers all the aspects. And now that the whole trail system is growing, and now there's bridges crossing the river, and there's all these liability issues, all this stuff needs to be addressed now. We the horse has kind of bolted the barn, and now we've got all this stuff going on, and no regulations and no policy governing any of it. So now we kind of got to pull back and look at what we've got, and try to address some of these issues. So I think we're at a point now where we're just going to take a deep breath and have a look and see where we're actually at.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Well, I could say something that 53 years ago, I remember sitting in a hotel, my dad owned it, and it was quiet Sunday. All you could hear was the wind blowing through the trees. No tourists. He'd tell me, wait till the tourists come. And now I've seen what's happened since the tourists would come. The towns, they degraded so much. All the life and the nature that was here and it seems to be in conflict with development for the tourist dollar. And we've lost a lot of the value and character of this town as a result of what's happened. And I hope that you can consider some of the life that's left here and protect it. That's all.
Thank you. Jan?
A little while ago, Glenn had come and had said that Trish had wanted some trees taken down in the campground, and you guys gave him the go-ahead to do that. Are those the trees that we're talking about that were taken down at the beach?
No.
No. Okay. So we're talking about something else. Okay. And the ones that we're talking about are ones that were taken down to address these illegal camping issues.
Well, I think it's a little more complicated than that. If I remember right, we made the step of getting an arborist to come in and look at all the trees in town.
Right.
Okay, so that was number one. What does that involve? So every tree that was looked at had a tag put on it where there was an issue with its age, its character. But I don't think, I know Upper Castle, in terms of the natural trees up there, certainly weren't evaluated. It was the boulevard trees. So we made a step to kind of look at the boulevard tree situation. And quite frankly, there's quite an initiative because people would, if you've been in Nelson, their walkway around the park there, a lot of those trees are dedicated. And they have a plaque dedicated to in the memory of someone. And there's been a suggestion that that might be a way in which the village could pay the high cost of replacing trees. But we never got down to the detail of a specific strategy, I don't think. Like her report just dealt with, especially the trees that are a danger. They are dying, and whether you cut them now or cut them later, you need to replace them. So I think what I'm hearing here is that council, and I don't know whether there's enough room in this budget this year, will take a second look. Now, the area that we're talking about around Kootenai Lake, the riparian area interface is a really complicated discussion as to, and this is where the public comes in, where do we want to go from Larch Drive around to the teenage property? What does that look like? What are the liabilities involved? And I think Neil's report kind of points us in a direction where we're going to be able to bring that all together. And over time, because this is going to take time, this is not, well, you've been in New Denver, it's the same thing. We got a creek running through the middle of town, what are they going to do with it? Well, there's issues with flooding, there's issues, well, we've had a couple of debris torrents down the river this winter for the first time that, in my experience, moved an awful lot of dirt and gravel and trees to another place. So we're going to do the best we can, but there's no instant solution to this stuff. It's more or less assess it, analyze it, and come up with a plan, and then see how because it will change over time. So we want to be. How many trees did we plant? Susan, remember we planted a bunch of, was it 25 maples last year?
Yeah, that was a few years.
Yeah, and they're a nice tree. I think they add some value. They're not a native tree, but they're a boulevard tree, which has certain characteristics that lead us to believe that the cost of maintaining those trees is not going to be excessive, which was something we had to consider. Anyway, anything else?
Yes.
Well, the main concern that came from the gallery was that much of what went on down at the beach was not danger trees, a lot of brush and small stem stuff that was cleared. And people were quite upset about that. And what happened is the disturbance of the soils was significant. the area became marginally usable for anything because it was left in such a rough state. So that was a lot of what came out of the public gallery's concern. It's not about boulevard trees or
No trees down there.
no,
It's more brush.
this is on the beach. This is on the beach below high water mark at the mouth of the river, and
Right.
it's considered, the concern from the gallery was it was a sensitive area, basically the fish habitat, and there was some significant disturbance down there. And I think at the next committee of the whole, we're going to hear from the foreman about kind of what the intent was, because council still hasn't, we still haven't heard what the intent, what the goal was. In other words, it did other than removing danger trees, and it's definitely way more than danger trees.
Yeah, okay. And so is that area in the arborist report at all?
In the what?
The arborist report?
I don't think so. If I remember correctly, I mean, because we had all of Upper Castle, we had all of Lower Castle, and that's, the liability there was not as great as our existing boulevard trees, plus the ability to budget to remove certain boulevard trees that have reached the time when they need to be replaced. What would we replace them with before we actually take the boulevard tree down?
Okay, and so the tree policy, what's the status on the tree policy? That's in effect, I imagine.
Well, I think the policy for the trees was look at the report. Does it have a tag on it or not?
Right.
How did the arborist assess that tree? So I've seen a few of those tags. I mean, they're there. I don't think they've been removed. They're a little round tag, and they've got a number on them, and that number goes specifically to the report, so that we know what we're talking about.
Okay. Also, Councillor Holland was talking about a committee that was connected to the RDCK service. And I know about the Council and LED Regional Parks Service or something, and there's a committee there, but it sounded like you were talking about a different one.
A lot of the shared services, especially around parks, have been governed by commissions, and the commission form of governance has been having there's been some issues with that, and so the regional district is in the process of creating committees of the regional district rather than using commissions for management and administration. So the North Kootenai Lake Services Committee will be the one that will be more the direct governing body for the shared services rather than relying on commissions.
So they'll deal with all of the shared services, whereas like the commissions each have their own.
There's going to be a transition period of time where there's some commissions that have long-standing. They've been working in long-standing ways, so they're not going to scrap everything.
Right.
Right, but where there's voids, or where specifically with the waterfront trail, would be a classic place where immediately, as soon as it gets constituted, that the services committee would definitely have. Be a point of contact.
I thought the waterfront trail was in that regional, that Council and LED Regional Parks.
It is at the moment.
It is.
Yeah, there is a transition.
There's no commission.
Oh, there's no commission?
No, there's no.
Oh, dear.
So it's just, that's part of the problem here.
Right.
Part of the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. And just, who was the gentleman who made that model?
Bud Carlson.
Bud Carlson. And it's basically for fundraising purposes, right?
For what?
Fundraising? For
Yeah.
For the City Hall. And I'm also just wondering about the boundary expansion. Why is that, as in Rob's report in Limbo, why is that sort of stalled?
Who's going to maintain the road? At what cost? There's 387 meters, I think, if I read the report right, between the village boundary and the airport lands. But the other thing about that report is there is no legal surveyed right-of-way on the North Road. It's just a building. So in terms of issues around the regional district wanting the right to use that road, I think there's some legal agreement you can make. to do that, I'm not too sure. But there's no legally established survey right away there. And that poses a bit of a challenge.
So you've applied, right, for the boundary expansion
Yes.
to the ministry?
Yeah,
And that's what the ministry's issue is, that's what's holding it all up,
Yes.
is the status of the road?
yeah.
Okay.
Is that correct, Neil? Is that the only thing holding it up, or are there other things?
Comment, it's an impairment.
Oh,
So, okay.
whoops.
And then also in, once the CAO's reports on, the CAO report on the codes, you mentioned unresolved tenure and one high traffic area where there's unresolved tenure. Is that the log sports area you're talking about?
The unresolved, yes, there's an area of land there that I believe used to be understood to be part of the municipal properties. But some investigation, I think, prior to my coming along in the last couple of years, revealed the fact that it was actually sitting on vacant crown land.
Right.
So the cost of tackling that it could be quite extensive, depending on how it's viewed. And there's certainly some discussions to be had in the long term with various user groups, some with things built there.
Right.
But it's all under municipal bylaw jurisdiction, however. So it's not like unincorporated crown land where there's no rules. You still can't squat there and so on and so forth. It's within boundaries.
Right. Okay. That is the property that you were referring to with the Thomas Woods area one.
High traffic area?
When you were.
Yeah, that is
That's
a high
the
traffic.
one.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That's what I'm watching. Great. And then just one last thing, in the SIDS minutes, we're talking about an ICCI funding program. What's ICCI?
Invest Canada Community Initiatives.
Invest Canada Initiatives. Okay, great. Thank you.
Was that the foreign investor one?
Yeah.
That they just dumped?
Yeah, but we got into the last round and we didn't get
Oh,
the
okay.
money. Not a lot, but
The new budget had something to say about that particular program,
Oh.
federal budget. Last question.
Okay, 2001, December 20th, there's from the Urban Forestry Landscape Consultants in Nelson. This is when you were planning committee chairman of the village of Kaslo. They wrote a report then of the trees in Kaslo, and they recommended in 2001 34% of the village trees should be cut down and replaced with ornamentals. And then down the road, an arborist is hired in Vancouver to come in, and a few $1,000 cost to inspect all the trees. And my question is, on B Avenue, it was a beautiful arbor of trees, and now on the south side there's only 3 left. And I talked to the people, the residents that bought these houses, and they asked that the trees be cut down. They were healthy trees, they just didn't want them shading their gardens. They were healthy trees, so is there a clause that homeowners or potential homeowners can have these trees on the boulevard cut down? And also at the beach, in the riparian zone, and in the 90s, the RCMP had the village cut down a lot of trees because they couldn't chase people that were drinking on the beach. So a lot of trees were came down in 1990s.
So what's your question?
Well, is there a clause in
To the best of my knowledge, not at this time. We're working on it.
question? Well, then why were the trees cut?
Well, I'm trying to answer your question here, and
Well, my understanding is only unhealthy trees can be cut.
no, that's
on
not
boulevards.
correct. That's not correct.
This is what happened on the avenue, between
Yeah.
4th and Fish, and at the public beach.
Well, all I can say is that, you know, we're talking past history here, the trees have been cut. You know, there's a lot, when people complain to us, we try to accommodate their complaints for a number of reasons, tree roots in the sewer system, on and on it goes. But please, get involved when the public process comes along. Their meetings will be advertised. You can then make written submissions, verbal submissions, and we'll try and resolve it. Okay? I think we're finished.